Quick recap since last we were here. Vagrus is an adventure role-playing game. It is very much inspired by tabletop RPGs such as Dungeons & Dragons. It's got a backstory to the world that goes back millennia. It has character creation and customization. It's got companions, all of which have their own motivations that can turn them more loyal to you or even turn them against you. It's got a wonderful scope of monsters, lands, lore at every turn. It is just an amazingly in-depth and complex game. Vagrus takes place in a world called the Riven Realms. This is a world that once upon a time was a prosperous and in some ways wonderful place to be. Unfortunately, due to the hubris and corruption of the citizens that were there, the mortals, the old gods of the time grew wrathful, and they hated what everyone and thing was becoming. So they created a unspeakable terror called the Calamity. And this was an event that ripped the world apart, not only physically, but also in spiritual and metaphysical ways as well. It destroyed basically everything. About the only civilization that came out of that was the Empire, which was the greatest human civilization at the time, but it wasn't able to survive this unscathed. Because of the way the gods ripped apart the world in their wrath, it twisted everything. It opened up pockets to dimensions of dark, evil things. It caused corruption just to be a natural thing. So, like, just existing in this world would corrupt beings physically or mentally. It was not good, to say the least. In fact, it was so bad that after the gods calmed down and they saw what they had done to it, they felt ashamed of themselves and they left. And no being in the universe or other dimensions or anywhere has seen these original creation gods since. They have just completely walked away and are probably never to be heard from again. Since the Calamity, however, it has been basically nonstop survival. There has not been an attempt, well, there's been several attempts to try and rebuild. It hasn't gone well. The people who survived the Calamity are constantly fighting against magical anomalies, monsters, barbarism, forces from other dimensions, each other. I mean, you name it. The land itself is virtually barren, so, even the most basic necessities, food and water, are not easy to come by. You've got the Walking Dead everywhere. You have got spirits. I mean, it's a rough world to live in, and the gameplay certainly reflects that. It's one of the more cohesive elements of Vagrus as a game. They built this world that's awful. It sucks. No one wants to go there. Like, if I could travel dimensions, not going to Vagrus. And the gameplay reflects that. So it's this wonderful cohesion. You don't get told the world sucks and then you walk in like the ultimate badass. It's not what happens. Since my original video, however, they have released a DLC called Sunfire and Moonshadow. This is a massive DLC. From everything I've been able to see, it easily, at bare minimum, doubles the size of the game in terms of gameplay time. Most of the DLC focuses on an area called the Bronze Desert. That's where your new factions, a lot of your new monsters, new characters, all that jazz are going to be located, where you're going to have to travel to interact with them. Another thing, however, that it introduced was crossing into other dimensions. That's a big part of the DLC as well. To get there, it's not super hard, by Vagrus standards anyways. What you have to do is you have to go to a town called Lumen, which is not a starter town because there's no such thing as a starter town in Vagrus, but it is close to the starting area, so it's not too hard to get to. You have to get 400 boss, which is one of the types of currency in the game. It's kind of similar to like gold coins, basically. You have to have at least 3 companions with you, and you have to have at least 3 renown. All of that is not super hard to get. In fact, for this review of the DLC, I started a totally new save file and pretty much powered my way to that. Was that necessarily the smartest idea? Probably not, but it can be done. You can just create a new character and dive in and roll up that stuff relatively quickly. It's not going to be very smart because the DLC is going to be introducing new elements that are probably not suited to a brand new character where you have no good gear, you're limited on money and supplies, and what have you. What you do is you go to Lumen after you've gotten those couple of things, and that's where you're going to meet Agos again, who is the Old Wanderer. He is the character you're speaking to during your character customization. You run into him again, and that's where you're actually going to be able to access the DLC proper. When you talk to him, he will want you to go to the crossroads near Arkeen, and then once there, you'll find out that there is a dimensional gateway. He gives you a special item that allows you to activate this gateway so you can cross through it. Once he's given you this new quest item, you are able to open the portal and step through it. This leads you to it's not really a world, it's a floating island in a broken dimension. Once there, you will be able to make your way to a town called Kadath. This is a sanctuary for refugees, just people who are lost. It's like an interdimensional refugee camp. The place is guarded by Acheron, who is an Ithil. The Ithil are a now extinct race. They look somewhat similar to elves, but based on what he says through talking to him, there's probably no relation. They are even more ancient than elves would be because they are a multi-dimensional elf, so to speak. So Acheron, he fills you in a little bit on the different dimensions. He fills you in on these demons that killed off his people, have ravaged multiple dimensions, and are kind of spreading just like a disease throughout reality. Acheron teaches you a little bit more about how to travel between worlds and then eventually helps you return to yours. Once you are back in your world, you are free to travel. And this is kind of where I ran into an issue. So I went through all of that, which is what the footage you're going to be seeing is about, most of it anyways. Once you've gotten done talking to him and he recharges your ability to jump worlds, you're back in the standard Vagrus Riven Realms, and you're just left to go about as you please, just like what the rest of Vagrus is. It gives you some direction, but the direction is only there when you find it. You have to stumble across things to advance story beats, to advance with characters and so forth. So once I got back into the Riven Realms, it takes like 60 days for your magical item to recharge. And I didn't know what to do from there. At the time I was playing, I couldn't figure out what I was supposed to do next. And I was basically completely stuck and I was lost. And this is something that I probably should have predicted. I said in my original video that Vagrus definitely doesn't hold your hand. Vagrus is very much a Souls-like game in that it is meant to be difficult. It is meant to be challenging. And just as I said in my previous video, that is one of the most wonderful things about the game. I've done a lot. I've done as much reading as I could and digging, trying to figure out what I did wrong. And I think the thing that I did wrong personally was that I just gave up a little bit too soon. And I also started the DLC a little bit too soon as well. I definitely think you will have a much easier time going into the Sunfire and Moonshadow DLC if you're playing with an established character. Definitely build up your supplies, your levels, get used to the flow of the game before you try and dive into it, and it'd probably be a lot easier. But the DLC, it fits wonderfully into the game. So I really think you should have, 20 some odd hours down in the game before you mess with the DLC, because from what I'm able to gather, once you get back from your initial dimensional trip and you're back in the Riven Realms, you've got a good, 20 or so hours of gameplay probably before you're going to encounter the next beat that will advance that DLC. This game is not quick in that regard. You are going to be investing a lot of hours in it, just like you would a proper Dungeons and Dragons campaign. Vagrus is a beast of its own. That's about the only thing I can say. I will not give it a negative review for its difficulty. I will not say that it's bad because of its difficulty. I don't believe that. Vagrus is a passion project. There can be no doubt about that whatsoever. From the second I first started looking into the game, from the second I booted it up, I could tell that the developers made this game with love in mind and not necessarily money. You know, it's not a sellout game like Call of Duty. It's not an easy to make and throw away game. It caters to a specific taste, and there's no compromise in that. And that's one thing I truly respect that the developers did. They made what they wanted to make, and they stayed true to that vision. At least that's what it appears like from the outside. Who knows? You know, maybe things are different from their perspective, but from my perspective as a fan of the game, I said this in my last video, they perfectly encapsulated what it means to sit down with your friends and play something like Dungeons and Dragons. And they took that, the core essence of that, and they made it into a video game that you can experience anytime that you want. And it's just truly incredible. If you want a challenge, a real challenge, Vagrus is going to be for you. If you want a story and game system that are going to surprise you with their complexity at almost every turn, Vagrus is for you. I would love to know, one thing I would absolutely love to know is how many lines of dialogue and story and lore the developers wrote, because it's intense. Every time I boot up the game and I play it, I'm blown away by the sheer depth of lore that they put into it. It's truly impressive. So, ultimately, what can I say in review of the DLC? Sunfire and Moonshadow is definitely more of the same of what Vagrus is, and I mean that in all the best ways possible. It is going to give you the chance to continue to experience this intensely dark, depressing, and interesting world. It's going to give you a chance to continue with your characters and continue the game in ways that I can only imagine. I recommend it. I have to, because of the passion that went into making it and the feeling it gives me. As I said before, I suck at this game. I suck real bad at this game. And it doesn't matter. That's the interesting thing. It doesn't matter that I suck at Vagrus, because just like I said in my previous video, if you ever played a tabletop RPG and that was like something you did a lot and you really enjoyed Sundays or whatever day it was that you got together with your party to continue the campaign and see what happened next, play Vagrus. Call up your old D&D friends, get them to play Vagrus, because when life is getting in the way and you can't get together like that, Vagrus will give you that same joy. So would I recommend Vagrus still after all this time since my last review? Most definitely. Would I say go ahead and get Sunfire and Moonshadow? Most definitely. Thank you so much for watching this video. Definitely like and subscribe. Leave us a comment down below as well, so that we can know that you enjoyed watching me make a fool of myself reviewing a game again. I'm looking forward to making more videos in the future, and we will see you then.